invite the Honourable Attorney General to speak to his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to thank the committee for their recommendation that Fiji ratify this particular optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji, of course, now, as we know, has ratified the 9 core international convention pertaining to rights. If I could reiterate, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Convention Against Torture and Other Inhumane and Degrading Treatment, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Convention for Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW as it's called, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, or CERD, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, or ISCRA, International Convention on the Protection of Rights of All Migrant Workers and members of their families, Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is the optional protocol we are agreeing to ratify as recommended by the committee, and Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it would be, from one perspective, an abomination if anybody actually objected to the ratification of this optional protocol. In Fiji, apart from the fact that legally we are obliged to follow the Convention on the Rights of the Child, as a society, we are very much in the protection of children. Children are very much part and parcel of our society. We, of course, have recently seen a number of incidences where children have been put in very vulnerable situations, where they've been exploited also, and we need to be able to address that as a society. We need to ensure that the laws are in place and the laws, in fact, get enforced. This ratification, Mr. Speaker, sir, will again send a signal to the rest of the world that are willing to participate in the enforcement of these particular rights. The Fijian Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir, of course, under Section 10 and 11, guarantees all Fijians freedom from slavery, servitude, forced labor, and human trafficking, and freedom from cruel and degrading treatment. Furthermore, Section 41 of the Fijian Constitution recognizes the right of every child to be protected from abuse, neglect, harmful cultural practices, any form of violence, inhumane treatment and punishment, and hazardous or exploitative labor. It further states that the best interests of a child are the primary consideration in every matter concerning the child. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography would be most clearly in violation of Section 41 of the Fijian Constitution. Sections 226 and 227 of the Crimes Act 2009 respectively provide that the selling and buying of minors under the age of 18 years for prostitution, illicit sexual intercourse, or for any unlawful or immoral purposes are criminal offences. The Crimes Act under 2009 under Division 5 and 6 respectively create offences with respect to slavery, sexual servitude, and deceptive recruiting, and trafficking in persons and children, which also have extended jurisdiction whether or not the conduct constituting the alleged offences occurs in Fiji. Of course, this extends across the boundaries. As we know, many countries did adopt that. Fiji followed suit when we actually got rid of the penal code and put in place the crimes decree, because you could actually have Fijians committing these offences offshore. They should be brought to the law. Similarly, we have people who may be committing those offences in Fiji, and they will be equally culpable back in their own domestic jurisdictions too. And we had increased the tariff that is applicable. The ranges, of course, from 12 years imprisonment to 25 years imprisonment. Linked to that also, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the Online Safety Act, which was introduced, which renders it an offence to post intimate visual recording of an individual unless that individual consents to the specific post. This is online. We've seen quite a lot of that. I think once mentioned in this parliament, where we had a particular lady whose room and bathroom was bugged with cameras, where, whatever you do in your bedroom, you change, you have a shower, was all being caught on camera and being live streamed. This leads to enormous, psychological and emotional impact, let alone the exploitation. But it also has applied to children. We've also seen a couple of cases where children were also filmed, and the individuals, the adults who are doing that, were actually selling those images online to offshore people who used to come to Fiji. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have also linked to that under the Extradition Act 2003, an offence is an extradition offence if the conduct that constitutes the offence, if committed in Fiji, would constitute an offence in Fiji for which the maximum penalty is life imprisonment or other terms of imprisonment. Mr. Speaker, sir, we of course also note that we have in recent times, because of the laws that have now been put in place, where there is a lot more liberal approach to discussing these issues, has meant a number of individuals have come forward, or their families have actually come forward and brought things like sexual exploitation of children, sexual assaults on children. They feel a lot more confident with the law, and therefore they're bringing them a lot more forward before the law. And I think that's critically important to note, and we'll see that. At the same time, we should not use that as an excuse or a reason to say, well, they're only doing it now because the law has been put in place. We need to also try and curb any new offences. And that, of course, comes about through strategies put through the respective ministries, different agencies, through the police, through, of course, our faith-based organizations and as a society as a whole. But we also need to be able to adopt new international standards that can be, of course, followed. Our judiciary, our law enforcement agencies, our families, our communities, our NGOs at large become sensitized towards, and in fact are able to then fulfill the requirements, not just under the convention itself, but also the optional protocol that we are agreeing to ratify. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
I thank the Honourable Attorney General for his motion. Honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on this issue. And I give the floor to the Honourable Minister for Women. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.